Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing a full geode tumbler design. We're going to just fill up this entire tumbler and make it look like a really cool fall geode vibe. So we are going to start with a white powder coated 20-ounce skinny tumbler from Craft Haven. And I'm going in here, as you can see, with just a regular pencil. And I'm going to freehand sketch my little geode lines. Now, when you typically will do a geode, you would create like a little section on your tumbler, and you would do essentially this exact same thing, like just draw your kind of natural looking lines. I'm just going in kind of horizontal stripes around the tumbler, working my way down. Now, these are not the end all be all shape for our geode. These are just a rough sketch, giving me an idea of how many glitters I'm going to use, what overall shape I'm going to go for, and all of that. So these do not need to be perfect. You just want to roughly sketch out how many sections you're going to have and give yourself an idea of the shape of everything. So once I've got my rough draft going, I'm going to grab all of my glitter colors, and we're also going to use some foils on this tumbler. We're going to do 3 sections of foils, and then the rest will all be glitter. I will have everything I'm using linked down below in the description box, so all of the glitter names and the foils and everything will be down there for you, along with some discount codes. So I'm going to go, like I said, with a fall theme. So I grabbed a bunch of like gold and copper and some burgundy, oranges, that kind of vibe. You can do any color combo you want, any theme you want. This is kind of a design that you can just really do whatever you want with. And I really love geodes because you get to use a lot of different glitter. So I wrote down a list of what order I wanted to put my glitters and my foils in. And now I'm going to go in and base coat each of my sections. So I'm using acrylic paint here. I'm using the Delta Creative Ceram Coat acrylic paint. You can get this at Joann's, Target. You can get it on Amazon. It's my favorite acrylic paint, but you can use whatever base coat you prefer. And I'm just taking this little paintbrush and I'm following those lines that I drew, just trying to keep everything as clean as possible. Again, you don't have to follow your initial sketch lines perfectly or to a T. It's totally okay. The whole goal here is just to make this look really natural and geode-y. So I'm just going to continue working my way down the tumbler, matching my base coat to the glitter color that I have designated for that stripe. Just trying to match the base coat of my paint with the color of the glitter so that we get the best coverage possible. All right, we've got all of our base colors painted. So now we're basically just going to work our way through glittering all of this. We're going to start with our darkest color and work through all the way to our lightest color. We'll epoxy and then we'll do our foils last. So we're going to have some blank spaces when we go into epoxy, and that's totally okay. They'll get covered up later. But I'm just going to go through with my Mod Podge and work from my darkest color to my lightest color, referencing my list. So here we go. One question I get asked a lot is if I wait for my colors to dry in between like each layer or each section, or how I prevent like glitters from contaminating. And one, I don't. let the colors dry before going to the next color. The reason I'm using Mod Podge in this situation and with other geodes and things where you use a lot of glitter back to back, Mod Podge dries really, really fast. So in the time that it takes to like glitter and clean everything up and clean your glitter up and all of that, your Mod Podge is already starting to kind of dry and set up. So in essence, I do kind of wait for it to dry, but not intentionally. I just go to the next color, but in that time in between each glitter, that Mod Podge is already drying, if that makes sense. And I also always, well, almost always, will work from my darkest glitter color to my lightest, because it's a lot easier to hide contamination when you lay a light color over a dark color versus the other way around. So I always will work from my darkest color to my lightest color. And then with the Mod Podge, once it's dry, you can go in and kind of brush off really lightly any fallout glitter from a different color or a different section, and it'll come right off. So those are a few ways that I, one, working with all these glitters back to back to back, and two, how I prevent or kind of deal with contamination. After all the glitter was applied to my tumbler, I let that sit and dry overnight just to be sure that it was totally dry, and then I added 2 coats of the clear gloss spray from Rust-Oleum to seal all of that glitter, and then I added 2 coats of epoxy. If you want to seal your glitter in another way, you absolutely can. I just did the spray this time, but whatever sealer you like to use the best is totally fine. So after my 2 coats of epoxy are applied, I'm going to go through and do all of my sanding. So I'm going to sand down that top rim really, really well, and then I'm going to take my sander and sand the body of my cup really well also. I'm using I think this is a 120 or a 180 grit little sanding pad. So I'm just going to sand my tumbler until it is as smooth as I can get it so that we can apply our foils. I'm going to use this Artsyville Embellishments foil adhesive. I got this from Artistic Painting Studio. I'll have it linked down below in the description box with a discount code for you. And I'm going to take my little brush here and I'm going to apply it essentially the same way I did the base paint for when we did the glitter. I'm just going to follow those rough lines, put a thin coat of this adhesive on each of those 3 open sections. And I actually let this sit and dry overnight. You need to just wait about an hour, but I did it and then forgot about it, went to bed and came back the next morning and it worked out perfectly. So as long as you let it sit and dry for at least an hour, you should be good to go in with your foils, even if you're like me and you completely forget that you did this step and then you go to bed. So for this top section, I'm going to take this really pretty kind of champagne toned foil, and I'm just going to lay the strip of it around the cup, as you can see, and I'm using my vinyl scraping tool actually to push the foil onto the cup and get it to release from the paper. You can use your fingers, you can use a scrubbing brush, whatever tool you have is totally fine. You just want to make sure that the foil releases from the paper before you lift it up. So I kind of just went through, made sure it was adhered the best I could get it, touched up any spots that I could, and then I moved down into the next foil section. I didn't base paint underneath my foils because I kind of liked the organic look of a little bit of the white coming through. It just looked more kind of natural to me. But if you want to base paint first, let that dry, and then do your adhesive, you absolutely can. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to put this burgundy foil down at the bottom, and then I'm going to use this really pretty marble foil in that middle section. Here's what our cup looks like after epoxying over the foils. You can see everything looks really clean and crisp, which I'm very proud of. That never happens. So what we're going to do now is go through with our paint pens, and we're going to trace over these little geode lines and make everything just look a little bit more defined, more cut out, and more geode-y. So let's pick our paint pens and we will get going. Now, when you do your striping or your lines, you'll have a lot of creative freedom. You can do all of your lines the same color. You can pick a few different colors and just alternate them. You can do everything different. It's totally up to you. You can make this look however you want it to look, of course. So I just picked out a few more kind of neutral-y colors. We're going for a fall vibe here. So I picked out some browns, some yellowy colors, dark green, gold, and we're just going to kind of go with whatever I'm feeling. I usually like to pick colors that are opposite of the color that I'm going over, if that makes sense. So like these are two pretty dark colors. I'll likely put a light paint line there so that it really shows up and contrasts really nicely with the glitter. But other than that, I just kind of go with whatever I feel. Now, I prefer the Posca brand paint pens. They're my favorite. I think they have the best coverage. They have a ton of color options and sizes. But I also am going to be using some of the Mondo Llama brand. These are from Target, very good as well. And also some Arteza brand, which are a good option also. So just use whatever you have. You really just want something that has good coverage and like a clean line. You don't need to use anything crazy or too expensive. Just use whatever you have and what works best for you. Everything I'm using here is an acrylic water-based ink. So I'm going to just do them, let them dry, and we don't have to worry about sealing or anything. I was going to use this deco color, but this is oil-based. I want to keep everything acrylic-based, so we are just going to stick with this color range. So starting off, I think I'm going to use my white to go in between these dark colors. What I'm going to do is just make sure that my paint is flowing. And I'm just going to start on one area of the cup, doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to draw a line like you see. And now these don't have to be steady. Remember, we're just going with really natural flowing lines here. We want this to look geode, is that a word? And organic. So don't worry if your lines are shaky. You almost want a shaky hand for this. And you're just going to follow where your two sections meet until you get all the way to the back. And then you've got your first line all done. So there's what it looks like. You can see it just adds that little extra nice touch. If you don't want to do lines, you absolutely don't have to. You can just do your cup like this, add a decal if you want, or leave it plain and be totally done. Totally up to you. You do want to do your lines though on a completely smooth surface. I wouldn't recommend sanding and then going in and doing your lines, because if you mess up, you can remove your paint lines, but over a sanded surface, it'll be harder to remove your paint. So I would just make sure that your cup is totally smooth. So if you make a mistake, you can take some rubbing alcohol or acetone, clean it off really easy, and you don't have to work so hard getting it out of all of those gritty sand marks. So let's see, now for this line here, I think I'm gonna go with the green, because I want to bring this green tone up a little bit. Like I said, you can do literally whatever you want. Just have fun with the process. Here we go. So I'm just going to continue working my way down, doing all of my lines, and then we will sit and let this dry for a few hours before we epoxy over it. Once I had all my paint lines applied, I let those sit and dry for about an hour, and then I'm going to go straight into my final coats of epoxy. I am not going to seal my paint pens or anything. As long as they're completely dry with the acrylic paint, you can just go right into epoxy. So I'm going to do one final coat of my Artist Cure epoxy from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. I did about 25 milliliters, so it was a bit of a thicker coat, but I really only wanted to do one final coat, so I made it a little bit heavier of a coat, torched it to get rid of any bubbles, and once that final coat was all cured, we are all done. So here is our final full fall geode tumbler. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I had so much fun making this cup, and if you guys remake it, please be sure to tag me in your photos at Made by MANIANDMAL so I can see what color combos and everything you guys come up with and show you some love. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, love you, bye.